This week, former special counsel Jack Smith will be back on Capitol Hill testifying before the House Judiciary Committee about his investigations into President Trump. This time, however, it will not be behind closed doors. Instead, it will be at a public hearing for all to see. Now, you might recall that Smith gave 8 hours of testimony last month. The transcript and video were subsequently released on New Year's Eve, showing, among other things, Smith laying the blame for the January 6th attack unambiguously on Trump.
The evidence here made clear that President Trump was, by a large measure, the most culpable and most responsible person in this conspiracy. These crimes were committed for his benefit. The attack that happened at the Capitol, as part of this case, does not happen without him.
Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon of Pennsylvania. She is a member of the House Judiciary Committee that will be questioning former Special Counsel Jack Smith. Congresswoman, thank you very much for coming to the weekend. What are your expectations for Jack Smith's testimony on Tuesday, right? No, sorry, on Thursday.
On Thursday. Yeah, I have to say, I was really surprised at first because they worked so hard to bury his testimony first time around. They refused to let him come and testify in person. And then, as you just noted, they released the transcript and the video like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on New Year's Eve when very few people are paying attention. But the more I thought about it, there's two reasons why they're doing it. First off, they don't care what he says. They had the deposition. They tried to dig for anything to discredit him. It didn't happen. This guy is a man of integrity, a career prosecutor who is not a partisan actor. He answered their questions fully, and they really didn't get any kind of dirt that they were looking for. So I think what we're going to see is Chairman Jordan and the others coming in with a set of talking points, which they will very loudly repeat. If they ask Mr. Smith any questions, they likely won't listen to the answers, and it'll just be generating content for their media, algorithms or whatever. But the second thing is that only part of Jack Smith's final report has been released, just the volume that has to do with the attack on the Capitol. The volume that has to do with his obstruction of justice and hiding the top secret documents that he carted off to Mar-a-Lago, that hasn't been released because initially there were ongoing court cases. Those have ended, but the Trump-appointed judge, Eileen Cannon, has blocked its release, and she may unblock it next month. But this way, they get his deposition in public before that second, reportedly even more damning volume of testimony or volume of the report comes out, and then they don't have to address it.
Congresswoman, the chairman of your committee, Jim Jordan, went on Fox News, of course, and previewed about what he is going to expect out of the testimony of Jack Smith on Thursday. Let's play that.
And I think, frankly, we're going to show that Jack Smith was part of this bigger effort. First it was the dossier, then it was Mueller, then it was impeachment 1, then it was impeachment 2, Fani Willis, Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, all this weaponization. He was part of that effort to stop President Trump. Thank goodness the American people can see the truth, and they made President Trump our 47th president.
That sounds like a grand conspiracy investigation, which I know that the DOJ is looking into.
Okay. When you hear that and you think about the fact that you guys already had a hearing, right? Jack Smith said from the very beginning, I want to do this publicly. I'm not scared of a couple cameras and you guys, yelling questions at me. The substantive Q&As often happen behind closed doors, right? Because, members of Congress, I know this will surprise many people, is that sometimes they're performative for the cameras, right? And so, the substantive stuff already happened. Do you worry that we might even see more of a circus on Thursday than we usually do? Because even for those who have real questions, they have the actual answer. So what are you, what are Democrats going to do to make sure that this maybe doesn't devolve into a circus?
Well, I think your assessment is right. I think we saw a preview right there with Chairman Jordan's interview, he's going to talk loud and he's going to bring in a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with the proceedings at hand and for which he has no evidence. But that's kind of how he rolls. I think Democrats will likely try to push back on some of the more egregious statements that we hear, but I intend to do what I did in the hearing, in the deposition that took place behind closed doors, which is dig into some of the things that matter most. I focused particularly on the fake elector scheme and the efforts to overturn the votes of Pennsylvanians, because that's what I represent. So I wanted to make sure that my constituents and the country could understand that the allegations that President Trump made, that Rudy Giuliani made, that Chairman Jordan and others made were absolutely false. There was no fraud or voter manipulation in Pennsylvania that would have changed the result. Donald Trump lost Pennsylvania, in addition to Minnesota and many other states in 2020. And, he can't change that result with bluster.
Congressman, I do have a question about Jack Smith, but I also know that you are fresh off of a trip to Minneapolis, where you were part of a congressional hearing. We heard from Congressman James Walkinshaw yesterday. He talked a little bit about what he learned from that hearing, but I'm wondering what your takeaways are from the situation on the ground in Minneapolis right now.
It was pretty horrifying. I mean, the abuses that are being committed in the name of the American people and with taxpayer dollars are really shocking. We heard from citizens, we heard from police chiefs, we heard from local officials about the chaos that's happening with these armed and masked ICE agents, really stirring up conflict and then throwing gasoline on it. And we see that repeated with what the White House is doing. Instead of the White House even trying to de-escalate, it keeps leaning into this situation. But what was truly remarkable was the citizens of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, saying, no, these are our neighbors, whether they are immigrants being treated badly, whether they are citizens being swept up as they're on their way about their daily lives, whether it's folks who are being stopped in a Target parking lot and asked where they're from. Whether it's the family that was on their way home from their kid's basketball game and the ICE agents tossed tear gas under their car and caused a 6-month-old baby to stop breathing. It's right in front of everyone's face. Everyone that we talked to, and I talked to friends and former colleagues from my life before Congress, everyone knows someone who's been impacted by this real invasion of Minnesota by these ICE agents.